What would the world look like if people felt like they mattered? Welcome to the Lead with Love podcast, exploring what it means to lead with love in business and life. I'm your host, Jada Selner, and in this show, I'll share meaningful conversations to help you, the creative, the entrepreneur, the world changer, reach more people, go after your dreams, and serve your community with love. I appreciate you joining me. Now let's get cozy and start today's episode. Welcome to episode 108 of Lead with Love. In this episode, I talk to Pat Flynn, and he talks about what introverts can do to best serve their audiences. And I'm over here raising my hand because I am closer to the introvert side of the spectrum. And he also shares his first experience with a hater and why he almost quit his business because of it. And Pat also shares some recommendations for how people can stand out online in a crowded marketplace and so much more goodness. Now, Pat is a father, husband, entrepreneur, and host of The Smart Passive Income, which I actually had the honor to be on just a few short years ago, where I shared how to build a community online, hosting challenges to really nurture your community. And I actually packaged all of that up in my course, Build Your Challenge. And Pat also has a podcast called Ask Pat, which is so cool. So between his two podcasts, he has earned a combined total of over 50 million downloads. Holy wow. I just cannot wait to dive more into this, because even though he has amazing numbers when it comes to his community and the revenue that he's been able to create, he is all about serving first and allowing the money to follow, which is what Lead with Love is about. Love over metrics is really trusting to make decisions with your heart and focus on people first. So not only has he had all of those downloads, but he's had tons of awards and features in publications such as the New York Times and Forbes. So I am so excited to let you in on our conversation today. Hello, Pat.
Yay. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
So Pat, there's a couple of things that I have to say. One, I just launched my podcast a month ago, and I went through your course, Power Up Podcasting. It was like the bumper rail for me. I don't know, when you think about bowling and you have like those bumper rails, it just gave me the 6-week focus to actually get this out. So first, I just want to thank you for creating this course and making it so simple to follow and so simple for me to actually execute and use my voice in the world.
Well, I mean, you have a very important voice, and I wanted to make sure it got out there. So I'm just very glad that I was a little bit of a reason that you got this started. And thank you for mentioning the course. It's just been an amazing thing to see students like yourself now sharing their message and now impacting others. I'm just a part of the equation. I'm paying it forward, and I know you're doing the same. So I'm just super proud of you for taking massive action. And here we are. Look at this.
Yes. I call that ripple effect impact. It's like you help one person and that person helps more people. And that's where the impact comes. So I have a couple of things. One is I first discovered you in my first online journey. It was in 2011. I was just learning about online marketing and e-signs back in the day.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And somehow I must have Googled like passive income, and I landed on your website. You were very transparent about numbers. You had your monthly income reports, but the one thing that I found was your ebook, which is about selling your first ebook. And that it was one of those things that I downloaded and didn't actually read for probably a couple of months, maybe even more than a year. But then once I did, it just gave me the inspiration to my business partner and friend, Jen Hansard, and we wrote an ebook for Simple Green Smoothies. And it was your ebook about selling ebooks that kind of pushed me over the ledge. Like, just get an editor, get out of your own way and get it out there. And that was literally the game changer for me and my online business.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. I knew that, you found me early on. I didn't realize that you downloaded ebooks the smart way and used that as kind of the start for everything. Wow, that's awesome. Because you and Jen had done amazingly with growing that business, and now you've branched out and have done this thing now, and just wow, I didn't know I was a part of that story.
Yes, and it was the selling the ebook for $5 and being so scared to sell something for $5, and we generated $8,000 in the first 7 days, which is a very similar story for you when you sold your first ebook for $19.99.
Yeah, 1995. It was an ebook. That was a study guide, actually. And I thought 1995 was even then it was too expensive. But there were other guides that were hundreds of dollars. And I wanted to be the person who sold it for the least because I wanted to help the most people. But the interesting thing is actually a lot of amazing things happened as a result of that. One of them, obviously, the business doing well, which was very surprising. I had just gotten laid off from the architecture industry. And that was my first business, was helping people pass an exam. The other thing was I was getting these incredible thank you notes from people for doing that. And, I don't have any recognition for any of the work I did in architecture. And here I was getting recognized for helping people pass an exam, getting handwritten thank you notes. And I just couldn't believe it. But one of those people had sent me a message, and he was a business owner. He said, Pat, dude, you're totally underselling your exam guide here. You should be charging more. Why don't you experiment and up the price to $29.95 next month and see what happens? And I was like, that's insane. I could never do that. That's stealing. I would never, I didn't go to school for business or anything. So this was all new to me. But then I did it as an experiment just to kind of try it out for a week. And I tell you, I sold more copies of it because it was perceived as having much higher value as a result. And then I started to add more products. And then I started to be an affiliate for, exam simulators and live classes. And, that business had generated over $1 million since it started in 2008. And I've obviously since branched off and done many other things. But yeah, it started with an ebook, a very similar story.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And with that, the question that I really love to lead with is, you talk about numbers and I talk about leading with love and love over metrics, but you're very transparent about numbers. But I think it does come from a place of love and really supporting and helping and inspiring people. So I would love to know, what does leading with love mean to you? And then how do you put love into practice in your business?
Yeah, leading with love to me means just leading from the heart. Serving first. That's my mantra. Your earnings are a byproduct of how well you serve your audience. And although I do talk about the numbers quite a bit, partially because I'm just a numbers nerd and I love that kind of stuff. That's almost kind of like my love language is numbers and data, right? And some people are that way. But when you infuse those numbers and surround it with heart, which you can literally see in my income reports, it's not just about the numbers. It's about, all right, guys, let's break these numbers down. Here's what happened. Here's what I really struggled with. Here's what worked. Go and try that and make sure you serve first all along the way. I feel like I cover all grounds there for people who love numbers first or who love heart first. I think it's important to kind of cross over because different people respond to different things. And yeah, the numbers are important as a business owner as well because, it helps make sure that you are providing most service because, the trend lines and you want to make sure everything's growing and those kinds of things. But, when you always have an approach of serve first, you can't lose. Nobody's ever gotten poor by helping others.
Nobody has gotten poor by helping others.
That's not a Pat Flynn original, by the way. I think that's Anne Frank or...
We'll find it in the research notes. We'll make sure to add that. I love that. So when you talk about serve first, what does that actually look like in your business? And how do you, tangibly, how do you actually do that in your business? What does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Great question. So the serving first always comes with knowing how to best serve. And that comes directly from those in my audience. And so every decision that I make in my business comes as a result of some conversations, some surveying, some understanding and analysis of what can be most helpful. And when I started business, it was very much the same way. What can I do that I know that can help the most people right now? And so when I got laid off, just that exam was on the top of my head. And I knew because I had coworkers who were studying for that exam as well. And people found it on Google and people were sharing it in forums. And there was large conversations happening in various architecture related forums. I knew that this was something that could potentially help. And then I started having conversations with people. And I always do that when I build a new business. When I started my food truck business, which is a resource to help people in the food truck space succeed with marketing and building and all the legal stuff that's related to that. That business started as a result of me having conversations with about 30 food truck owners here in San Diego and asking them, what are some things that you wish were easier when you started your food truck? What are some things that you wish were easier now? And just collecting all that data, not coming from hey, I'm the guru behind food truck owners, but no, on my blog, I go, hey, I'm somebody who's just very curious about how this business works. And I'm going to find out from the source exactly what you can do if you're interested and I can do if I ever wanted to start a food truck so that we can all put our best foot forward. So it always comes from understanding what can be most helpful. When I wrote my book, Will It Fly? That book was a result of the pain that my audience was having with, trying to start a business, but just not being confident in any ideas that they had and not understanding whether or not those ideas were going to work out or not. So I wrote my book, Will It Fly, directly as a result of that. Will It Fly? How to make sure your business idea, doesn't waste your time and your money. And, every decision I make comes as a result of what my audience is looking for. And when you do it that way, you can't lose. And I try as much as possible to take the guesswork out. And the number one strategy to do that is just have conversations, which wasn't easy for me at first because I'm an introvert and I don't like to just step out of that comfort zone, but I do it now willingly because I know that it's helpful.
So let's talk about that part because I think there are a lot of people that have fear of asking questions, especially for women. I know there's a part of us that's we want to know the answers, but that feedback, we're can we handle it? You know what I mean? Are we doing it right or doing it wrong? So what would be your recommendation for someone who knows they need to survey their audience, knows they need to get on a phone, email them some questions, how to get over that hurdle to actually getting on the phone with those people?
This has been discussed a lot in books, especially entrepreneurial books. Actually, there was the first book that I ever read in the space was The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss.
Yes.
And there's an exercise in that book where he goes, okay, you have to learn how to be uncomfortable and just have people stare at you and look at you. And you have to get used to that as a person who's starting a business. So there was an exercise where he says, okay, here's the plan. You go to a mall and you lay down on the floor and you start doing snow angels on the ground. And you just sit there for 5 minutes and do it. And everybody's going to look at you. It's going to be really uncomfortable, but it's going to train you to just realize that, hey, people are going to look at you. And then guess what? They're not going to look at you anymore and they're going to move on to their merry way. And what's the worst that can happen? Now, I hadn't done that because that was just
to know.
No, I was this is crazy. But I understood why he was saying that. I think just the understanding of the thought experiment was really helpful. So, okay, if I were to do this, what would happen? Yeah, you know what? That would be embarrassing and weird, but then I would just move on with my day and everything would be fine. Then that's what it takes to win as an entrepreneur and as a business owner and going through life. You have to experiment and try things, realizing that you're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes sometimes. Other people are going to look at you weird every once in a while. It's very similar to now I'm experiencing the same thing with my push into YouTube and video and vlogging a little bit, just to experiment. I'm out in public now. I was at Disney World with a camera and I was just talking to it and people were looking at me and staring at me throughout the whole park. But then guess what? I created some amazing content that people can now benefit from on my YouTube channel. So for me, what I would say to start is try to get in a position where you can share things, but know that you have people there that are going to trust you on the other end, because it's hard to start doing it just kind of jumping into the deep end. So if you have friends or colleagues who you trust and you can help them and they can help you, that's where I would start with asking friends and family, what are you struggling with? What do you want to learn more about dance? What do you want to learn more about? That's a great question to ask, by the way, to start out with. Even on your, we all have social media channels now, asking your followers or your fans or people who, follow your updates. What do you want to learn more about blank? And blank is whatever this thing that it is that you do. And you're going to, not everybody's going to say, oh, I'm interested in that, but the people who are will. And then you can direct message them and say, hey, I'm thinking of creating a resource. What are some things about that you wish existed that don't, or what would be most helpful to you? And you can kind of just start from there.
Thank you for sharing that. So I have a question for you. You're a dad and you have 2 children, and I know your son actually recently started a YouTube channel. Is that correct?
He did. He had been asking for a very long time, and we feel like now he's 8 years old. His name is Keone. We have Hawaiian names for our kids, even though we're not Hawaiian, but we just love island culture. And so he started a YouTube channel, and the reason for that was not just because we just gave in, but because we feel like it would be an amazing kind of experience for him to learn how to do those things. So we go all in with him in terms of the full process, from ideation of what the video is going to be about to him, quote, performing on that video and speaking to an audience that, is very small right now, but he speaks to them and he's having a lot of fun with it. And more than that, he also is involved in the editing of it and the titling and what's going to be in the description. I want him to get involved with all those little things to show how not easy it is. There's a lot of moving parts, right? And he follows a lot of YouTubers, in the education space and who teach fun things in science. And, it's kind of cool to have him realize just how much work goes into that now, because I think he appreciates it even more now. All the things that he's consuming, he appreciates it even more because he's now involved in it.
Yeah. So a question I have, because my daughter's 10, she has a YouTube channel. We're going to VidCon this summer.
That's going to be insane.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. But one of those intentions was, this is where her curiosity lies. And she's already wanting to learn, and she's editing, and she's so engaged. And there was a part of me too that was hesitant. We were kind of for a couple of years like, no, not a YouTube. We're thinking about the comments and the interaction. So I'm curious, what was the conversation between you and your wife with the hesitance? Like, what was happening before you actually said yes?
Yeah, well, it was along the same lines as like, this means his name's going to be out there. It's going to leave room for haters and trolls, all the things I experience too as a business owner. And we all do, and any successful business owner will experience that. But then the conversation went to, well, like for me, I remember when I started my business, my first hater really derailed me. Like it honestly almost stopped me in my tracks. Like I almost gave up because of what one person said versus, the tens of thousands of people who I had helped and who were sending me notes and such. This one person almost derailed the whole thing because I had never experienced that before in my life. So I was almost like, this might be actually a good opportunity, not to say like I want Keone to get haters and to have, that kind of thing. Like this is real life now. Like I know it's weird, especially for people who are of the older generation, that like, you ask any kid now what they want to be when they grow up, they say, oh, I want to be a YouTuber.
Totally.
Right. So I'm like, all right, how can we not fight against that, but use it to our advantage to make our son, and I'm assuming my daughter may want to follow the same path later on. How can we use that to our advantage to make them the best version of themselves they can be in the world that we live in today? So, I'm still controlling and, being a hawk and essentially in terms of like how he interacts with people. Yeah. But I think it's good lessons that can help set him up for success in the future.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I love how you flipped it, that the thing that we fear, that we want to protect them from, is actually what if they were able to learn those lessons earlier on while they still have us to have those hard conversations with, and they're in a safe space versus when you experience that as an adult on your own. So I think that is a really beautiful reframe of that.
Oh yeah. There's so many lessons like with the videos, not making them perfect and still shipping them. I mean, that's a huge lesson in business and in life, really. It doesn't have to be perfect. And that was the opposite of me. Because I would come home from school with a 96% of my test. And then my dad would be like, okay, well, let's spend the next 2 hours working on that 4% that you missed. And that's kind of how I grew up. So, I mean, teaching the kids like, hey, you can still produce and you can still help and you can still serve without being perfect is huge. And then, of course, this can potentially open up the opportunity for more specifically business type of conversations later on. Like if he were to, sell products of some kind, or at least to start with YouTube, once he qualifies, the money coming in from ads and, how that environment works. Again, like they don't teach this stuff in school. This is stuff that we can use to, okay, hey, you made, $70 in ads this month. Let's take 25% of that and put it in a bank account. Let's put 10% of that and put that into charity. Let's put, X% of that and, put it back in the business. Like, wow, what amazing lessons to learn when you're like a 10-year-old.
Yeah. Can I just plant a future seed? I don't know if it's already part of Keone's future, his 3-year vision.
Yeah,
but
room in the garden.
If you had an online incubator, like in person, kids getting together, working on their YouTube channels, like Zoe and I would be there. Like, yes, we would be the first ones in line.
We've talked, my team and I have talked about that because some of them have kids as well. And, this is a very important thing as well. I mean, there's things legally that you have to think about when you charge people who have kids who come to things. But I think somebody has to step up and be like, all right, kids, if you're going to do this, like, because you want to do this when you're older, here's how to do it right. Here's how to be safe. Most importantly. Yeah, that would be, thank you for sharing that.
Cool. So I don't know if you've done a take your dad to work day where you go, or, you going into your child's classroom to say, hey, this is what my dad does. But like, how do you tell your kids what it is you do, or how do you describe to their friends what it is you do?
I don't tell them what I do. I show them what I do. I get them involved. Like, one of the things that I love is I bring them into the office to watch me record a podcast, and they're just there and they're watching. And, at this age now, they're not going to disturb me and interrupt, but I love to get them involved. I let them touch all the buttons and change everything and get behind the microphone and start recording and having them listen to themselves. I mean, so for me, like with my parents, they worked so hard to provide for us, but they were never there. Like, they were there, but they were gone a lot. So I associated work with things that took my parents away. And me, I want it to be, all right, I want my kids to associate the work that I do as something that can bring us together. And that way, when I do have this really important launch and I do have to step away, or I do have to go to a conference to travel and speak in front of thousands, they understand why. And it's not just this thing that takes me away, but it's this thing that helps us come back together even stronger. And so they're at that point now, at least my son, he's even said, he wrote me a note the other day. I came home from the studio. I was filming a number of videos, and he wrote this note that was like, thank you for working so hard to, help the family so we can do more fun things together. And I was like crying when I came home and I read that, because it was just like, wow, this is exactly what I would want him to believe that the work is for. Right. I had gone into my son's school to speak, actually, because he goes to a school, and it's awesome because they teach very project-based learning, and they teach in a very entrepreneurial way. And they have this year-long project where they actually are building a startup. And by startup, I mean, think like Etsy, crafting goods kind of businesses, but they have to build a brand. They have to work on the numbers in terms of manufacturing. These are second and third graders who are doing this. And they invite people to come in. They invited a person to come in to talk about design and how to create your logo and what those mean. I came in to talk about marketing and how, when the fair happens at the end of the year where they sell their things, how are you going to stand out from everybody else? How do you get a person's attention? How do you make them realize that they need this thing? So I have come in. So I go to the school and they go, hey, Mr. Pat, it's kind of cool. And so I just want to, be a part of that and help the kids out, because it's just really important.
I love that you brought that up about how do you stand out online. And I'm sure, you've been in this 10 years plus, which is amazing. You're like
I'm an old man, it feels like.
You're like online dinosaur. Not really, because we're pretty much the same age. But there's this ever-changing tides in the online space, and I'm curious how you've been able, for someone who's just entering or feels like, people who are online dinosaurs have been doing it. They've built up these fan bases and things. But for people who are coming in, how would you recommend that they stand out in a crowded marketplace online?
The number one way to do it is to get personal with people. And by that, I mean, that's your advantage when you start out. A lot of people who are getting started now feel like that because other people are in the space and they've been doing it for a while, that it's impossible to break through. But no, it's actually the exact opposite. You have a huge opportunity to come in and bring something new, bring something different to the space, but also interact with people in a way that people like myself, I can't possibly reply to every email anymore. I can't possibly respond to every single comment that comes in anymore. And although I do my best and I have a team that really supports me with that, I can't have the personal one-to-one conversations as I did when I first started. That's actually what got me started too, was I would reply to every single comment. I would reply to every single tweet. I would reply to every single status update. But not only that, I would reach out to those people who replied, because there weren't very many of them at first. And I would ask them how I could help more, what I could do better. And that's, just that little extra touch point stood out from everybody else who was doing this. And then eventually, a number of those people realized that, I actually cared, that I wasn't just somebody who was on this mountain talking down to people, but I was somebody who was in the thick of it with them. And so as a result, we started to build a relationship together, my audience and me. And it was small at first, but when you build a relationship with somebody and you become friends with them, your friend introduces you to their friends, and they introduce them to new people, or you to new people. And that's kind of how I spread it, was organically through personalization and one-to-one. It's interesting because when you think about how business was done before the internet, that's how it was done, right? It was done in a one-to-one, almost like a small, like what Gary Vaynerchuk calls small town rules. You shop at Bob's bakery because Bob knows you and he knows your family. And when you come in, they go, "Hey, Pat, how are the kids? I heard about their little project last week. I hope that went well." Man, that's like a real relationship. And even though a store opens up that's, only, 30 seconds away and it sells bread at a cheaper price, I'm still going to go to Bob because I love Bob and Bob knows me and I know Bob, right? Mm-hmm. And then the internet came, and now we have this ability to reach everybody, it seems, but we've lost a little bit of that personal touch and connection. So those who are winning now are putting that personal touch back in. And so that's why I love tools like, even like Twitter and Instagram. It's so easy to send a video now to people who, are following you, and just to thank them, to ask them questions, to, help them realize that you're there and you're not just a person talking to the world, you're talking to them.
Yeah.
And that's how you can stand out.
Thank you for bringing that back, the personal human connection. And actually the thing that we think is the disadvantage of, I want to reach millions. And it's actually your advantage of not having a lot of people in your community from the beginning is the advantage, to be able to have that personalization. So are there any, because you are a community builder at heart, you truly do care about the people that you serve. Are there any mistakes, any oops moments that happened along the way, from the beginning and as you started to grow and expand, that came up?
Yeah. Do we have 5 hours to talk about every... seriously, I make mistakes all the time, but you learn. That's hopefully a lesson everybody can take away, is you have to just do, and that's going to be the best form of education for you. For me, there was a moment where, so in 2010, my business for the architecture thing was going very well, and Smart Passive Income had started. I started to grow a significant following there. I hadn't yet made any money from Smart Passive Income, but I was growing this big audience, and I was like, all right, I think, this is really cool. I have opportunities here. I'm just going to keep my eyes open. And then a couple of my friends, kind of around the same time, had built WordPress plugins. WordPress is a blogging platform, and plugins are things that you just simply turn on to make your website function in different ways. And they had each of them built one WordPress plugin that did different things, but they launched them kind of around the same time. And they each made 6 figures in earnings in a month from their launch. And I was like, oh my gosh, WordPress plugins, that's where it's at. And I have all these people who follow me and they are building WordPress websites. I need to build a WordPress plugin. So I found a developer literally the next day, and I was like, hey, developer, can we build something again? They're like, yeah, what do you want to do? And I was like, let me come back to you tomorrow. So I came back and I was like, okay, I just picked a random idea and I was like, all right, let's build this as a WordPress plugin. So we spent, first of all, I gave this person $5,000 immediately to start working on it. And there was going to be another $5,000 after it was delivered. And I was like, that's okay, because I'm going to sell this for $100 and I can definitely get more than 50 people on it. So yeah, let's do it. I'm investing in it. And what was supposed to take, $5,000 or $10,000 and, 6 weeks ended up taking $15,000 to $20,000 and 6 months. And the reason was because I didn't even know exactly what I wanted. So there was a lot of back and forth. This developer was like, all right, so what exactly do you want done? Is this how you want it? And they would come back to me with something, guessing what I wanted. And I'd be like, no, that's not what I want. Try it this way. Maybe let's try to do. And so it was a lot of back and forth, a lot of money wasted. By the time it was finally satisfactory, after 6 months of working, I shared it with a couple friends and they were like, meh, And I was like, what are you talking about? This is great, right? And they're like, no, actually, there's a couple tools that can do something similar. But what if it did this? It would be great if it did this instead. Or what if it did this? And I was like, oh man, I don't have any more money to put into this. I wish I just talked about this idea up front to validate it. And this is another reason why my book, Will It Fly, was so important to me, because I wish I had that book when I started. And so I never even sold it. And so it was like a $20,000 or $15,000 lesson that I learned, which was, okay, first of all, number one, big mistake. I was chasing the money.
Yeah.
Like the whole reason I started down this journey and lost a bunch of money was because I wasn't doing it to serve others. I was trying to make money from people and not help them. And as a result, be rewarded in some sort of transaction. So that was mistake number one. Number two, I rushed into it. And whenever you do any sort of software development, you're going to have to take your time, and you're going to have to make sure that when you work with somebody on the other end who's trying to figure out what's in your brain, you need to make sure that it's so clear that anybody could figure it out. And that's why we wasted a lot of time and money. And number three was the validation thing. Like, I wish I just shared those ideas up front with my colleagues or even some of my audience. I was like, oh, I'm going to keep it secret. And it's going to be this like big reveal, grand opening, like hitting the front page of the newspaper kind of thing. And it was just like not even close to that. So yeah, that's kind of where I lost my path a little bit. And I forever since then have realized, it's always about serving first. The money will come as a result of helping others. And so that's where always my new ideas come from is okay, what would be the most helpful? What itches is really itchy out there that I can scratch for people?
Yeah. So you have a blog called Smart Passive Income. And I'm sure you were searching for passive income when you first started getting into the online world. And I'm curious, when you first started, what did you think passive income was? And then I'd love to know what passive income to you really is today.
Yeah. I mean, when I was starting out, passive income was a term that all these internet marketers were saying was like what everybody wanted, right? Like, oh, passive income, like money for nothing. You can just push a button and then all of a sudden you have money rolling in. And that's like the opposite of what I teach. But the reason why I have passive income in my URL and why I talk about it and why the smart is in front of it is because I want people to realize that this is not easy and that passive income is actually the end game. The start is completely active. It's something that's going to be hard. It's something that's not going to happen overnight. So I figured, okay, if I can get in front of those people who are teaching it the wrong way, then I can teach people how to do it the right way. So it's interesting because a lot of people, when they saw my URL, even like Andrew Warner, who has a podcast called Mixergy, right? He had been asked to interview me a lot. And then he finally caved in after 2 years. But he told me on that interview, he's like, Pat, the reason I didn't want to interview you is because smart passive income, that just screams scam to me. And I told him what I just told you. And he's like, okay. So you're actually helping people out by being the person that can teach people how to do it the right way. And yeah, that's why I did that. And the passive part is, okay, so when you start something, it's going to be completely active. Passive is the thing that you do after you figure out how to serve people. Okay, how can I now do this in an automated fashion through tools, through software, or even through hiring a team who can now provide this service that I now figured out is really helpful? How can I now remove myself from the business but still continue to work on it? And there's no such thing as 100% forever and ever and ever passive income, except for like royalties for music or, acting and things like that. But when it comes to business, like you still have to, even like real estate and stock market stuff, I mean, you still have to update and upkeep your portfolios. Same thing with your businesses. And I would say, after you build a business, after a couple of years, then you can get it to the point where it can now start to be a little bit automated and things are working for you instead of you working in it. It's now working for you. And to me, it's just the idea that you can build something that can allow for that flexibility of time. And that's the most important thing. Now, like because of the way my business is structured, because I have things that are automated and a team and software doing things for me, I don't have to be there to trade time for money anymore. Now I invest time and effort up front to build things that are helpful and can continue to help later on. So this is why my wife and I, we are able to take our kids to school every day together, and why we are able to pick them up together at the same time. Like we're the only ones at the school who do this because all the other parents are tied to their jobs that they have to be at that specific time, versus us. Like I still work really hard and I still am stressed out every once in a while, but I make sure that I do it when I want to do it versus when I have to. So I've built that it's lifestyle design, right? And the passive income allows for that flexibility and time and that freedom. And I think that's the most powerful thing. A lot of people talk about passive income and they're like mansions, Lamborghinis, right? Like, oh yeah, awesome. Me, I'm like, no, I can walk my kids to school. I can be there to go to their concert because I can. And that to me is something you can't pay for. I mean, so what? You have a Lamborghini, you're still tied to your business. For me, it's about that time freedom.
I love that. Actually, this afternoon, my husband, George, and I will be volunteering for a potato bar in Zoe's classroom. And it's so true.
That's cool.
We do work hard. We're working on things, but we get to choose those hours. And I love that. So I read this article, a Forbes article that you were in, and you shared a story about testing and experimenting with a software that allows you to create a countdown timer, right? Selling an online product, and they have their own timeline that they're following to make a decision to buy. And one of the things that you mentioned for you and your team was this tool for us is not very Pat Flynn like. And I was really inspired by that and just curious of how do you define what the Pat Flynn brand is? Like, what is it that you stand for? What are the values that you have in place that help you filter all of the decisions that you do make in your company?
Yeah, so that was about a tool that allows for a person when they get into a specific essentially funnel or path in your business that they're on a countdown timer, and everybody has their own individual countdown timer such that when the countdown timer ends, that then they're not able to get that product anymore. And that injects a very smart thing in your business, which is called scarcity, which means, people will make a decision to buy when they know that eventually that thing is going to go away. And I think that's really important to have, because this was something that I was not for that at first at all, because I was like, well, I don't want to be a trickster. Right. And I don't want to be a trickster. I want people to know that this is something they need to buy on their own without me having to use these tactics and strategies. But you know what? Like, I've realized that as a business owner who knows I have something that can help people, that some people need to be convinced in that way to get in the door and then start to make change in their life. Some people they need that thing that pushes them over the edge. So things like that are helpful. But the way we had implemented it didn't seem Pat Flynn like to me, because it just disconnected the conversation I wanted to have. And it really made that it was sending emails out like, hey, this is not going to be available to you, anymore. Ever. And to me, that wasn't fair. And, we still inject scarcity in our business now, but by the removal of certain bonuses, but we still have real life conversations with people. And so it was just, the reason why I tried it was because I think it's important to try things that can potentially be helpful. But when it starts to go against your values and why you do what you do, then okay, well, we tried it, not our thing. Let's move on to the next thing. So yeah, it just was one of those things that just didn't feel right. Like it's you can even hear me now. It's kind of hard to explain it, but it was more of a gut thing to me. And I think it's important to listen to your intuition and gut in your business every once in a while, but not just react to it immediately. I think it's important to listen to it and then start to have conversations about it. So this is something that was not just a spur of the moment decision to stop doing. It was something that I spoke to my team with. I spoke to my mastermind group and other friends with, just to make sure that like, okay, well, let's talk about this. Why am I feeling this way? Is there something else we could do to make it more along the lines of what you want to do and how you want to be perceived? And, we just decided, that's not going to work for us. So let's try something else and see how that goes. So, yeah, I mean, again, this is about just like what I was talking about with the YouTube videos with Keone, is like you try things and it doesn't have to be perfect, and you learn along the way and you adjust. And that's what a good business owner and entrepreneur does. That's what a good parent does. They adjust to the situation. That's what a good friend does. And so that's all I'm doing here.
Awesome. I'm curious for you with Smart Passive Income, how do you stay creatively inspired? You're talking about the same subject for so many years. How do you continue to find ways to keep talking about the same thing over and over where you still feel super excited and engaged?
Well, a couple things. Number one, I have to realize that new people are coming across me all the time. And something I said a number of years ago, they might have never heard before. So I have to be as excited to share it, because I have to know that there's new people who are seeing this stuff for the first time. So that's number one. Number two, there's different ways to share the same message. And when it's shared on those different ways or platforms, some people respond on one and some people don't respond on another. So for example, on my podcast, for example, there's a number of listeners there who learn about things and that's how they respond best. They love to listen versus, they don't like to watch things. So that's why I have this strategy, where over time I've built kind of a presence on all these different platforms. I wouldn't recommend that to start. I would just pick one and really master that first. But, beyond that, I also realized that the principles are the things that don't change, but it's just the how and the where that do. And, in this world that moves so fast, Facebook is making algorithm changes. There's new platforms coming out. Podcasting is on the scene now, but then even within podcasting, there's new things that we can do. And, that's exciting because that means, well, it is new, but the underlying thing that never changes is the fact that, in order to win, you need to serve people first. And I think that's just always been the case over time, even before the internet happened, right? So now that we have these tools available, I'm exploring and understanding and trying and again, experimenting. That's what's fun is just maybe this could work, maybe this doesn't. And that's how I stay creative because it allows me to explore. I mean, exploration is really what being human is all about. In addition to that, now I'm trying things on YouTube, which is a big challenge for me. I'm an introvert and I don't like to get on camera. But when I do, I've found that allows for the most flexibility creative wise because it's, audio, visual, and storytelling at all at the same time. And so that just allows for more variables and it's just more fun. But, podcasting, I feel still the number one platform. If I were to start from scratch, I would definitely start a podcast because then, you get that intimacy and people are listening to you for way longer than on YouTube or reading a blog post. So, I always just try to keep it fun, and if I'm doing something and it's not fun anymore, I always ask myself, okay, well, why am I not having fun? And sometimes it reminds me about why I made that decision in the first place. Another time in which, reignites that fire. And other times I realize, well, okay, I think it's now time to stop this and move on to something else.
So can you tell me when was the last time that you felt overwhelmed in your business? And then how did you overcome the overwhelm and get back into that focus and flow?
Yeah.
As entrepreneurs, we all get a little stressed sometimes.
For sure. I mean, you aren't an entrepreneur unless you experience overwhelm every once in a while. It comes in seasons, right?
Yeah.
My last season of overwhelm was in November of last year when I, was saying yes too often to speaking on stage. So I was speaking for 4 weeks in a row, one stage per week. And that's a lot. I know some people, they speak multiple times a week and that's what they do. For me, I typically speak every other month, but it just so happened that this particular month was just bang full of all kinds of different events in different parts of the world. Actually, one of them was in London with my buddy, Chris Ducker. And it was exhausting, not just to me though, but to April. And I made sure now to do a better job of saying no to opportunities, even though they're good opportunities. I think it really came down to me wanting to please too many people and realizing that, okay, there's an opportunity here. Does this mean that if I say no now that this opportunity or something like it will never, ever come across my plate again? Usually the answer is no, which allows me to just be a little bit more comfortable with saying no. Now that's hard at the start because you want to take every opportunity. And I'm fortunate now that I can say no and still have the business run. So this year I've been doing a little bit better with, spacing out my talks and being very upfront with April in terms of the schedule so that she's never in that position where she has to take care of the kiddos, for a long period of time like that without me.
First, I want to say thank you to April. I read your monthly income report of December 2017, and that was a request. Was April, thank you for making this happen, for allowing Pat to be able to share his voice and his message with the world, because I've been stay-at-home mom, work from home mom, and it's definitely it's an overtime job. So thank you, April. And then the second question that I have around that piece with April is, have you guys created any type of guidelines or parameters on how many days are you away from them? I'm just curious about that because we actually created some agreements around that. Like for me, not to be away from the family more than 5 days. So the way that I plan my speaking. Yeah. I'm just curious if you have anything like that in place.
We haven't set any hard parameters, but we check in with each other and we have this understanding that we each have to be upfront with how we feel and what we're doing. And I think that's just the most fair thing, right? If I were to say, hey, babe, next week I'm going away for 4 days. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell. That's not okay. Although, we understand that sometimes there are going to be opportunities where she has to, go and I have to go. And I think, so there aren't any hard parameters and boundaries like that, but it's more of an understanding like, hey, let's just agree that we're going to be always upfront and honest and keep us as well informed as possible. So, we have conversations every night just to catch up, and, they're usually about, whatever happened on Stranger Things or something like that. But, a lot of times there are also conversations about, okay, well, here's what's coming up next week. And, she has a calendar, access to my calendar. I have access to hers, and that kind of thing. It's just, trying to keep an open conversation and being respectful to each other in that way. That's the most important thing. And I'm just so glad we have that understanding.
So before we wrap up, there was something that you said you want to be an example for your children, that there's joy in giving, and you want to build more, to make more, to give more. And so I'm really curious, what's your why right now? What's pulling you forward, and what's the vision that you're moving towards?
Yeah, I got a little bit of a taste of this that's now going to be amplified very soon when I had run a campaign to help build a couple schools in Ghana. I got my kids very involved in just that process of rallying my community to, raise funds to build schools for people who just unfortunately didn't have access to education. And, I went to Ghana. I wasn't able to bring the kids. They were too young at that point, but I did bring a videographer, not just to share with my audience, but mainly to share with my kids about here's what life is like elsewhere, so that you can get a perspective on, and just you can be grateful for what we have, but also know that you can make an impact on other people's lives who really need the help. And so, my vision moving forward, and what's really, really exciting to me is this idea of, entrepreneurship in education and helping others in that way beyond just my immediate, realm of influence. So, and this is also, inspired by a lot of what my kids' schools are doing. And so my goal, I feel like I'm just in the beginning of my biography. Like if you read Benjamin Franklin's biography, the first 60 pages, he's already 40 years old. The next 540 pages are the years after 40, when he did all that he did for America. And so I want my 540 pages of my biography to be about how I was an agent in this idea of having entrepreneurship be put into schools on the same level as science, reading, and math. I think whether a person becomes an entrepreneur or not, those skills teach you so much that you can use in life to be the best version of you that you can be. And so that's going to be what my mission is moving forward. And I'm going to be using Smart Passive Income as almost a launching pad for stuff that's happening in the next couple of years, books, speaking, podcasting, a YouTube channel related to just exactly what I just talked about. And it's getting me so amped up, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I get to bring my kids along the ride and hopefully affect a lot of other people too at the same time.
This is amazing, Pat. I'm so holding that vision, and I just appreciate your commitment to serving first, to experimentation, to collaboration, and being able to listen to people, and for just being such an agent of change for so many people's lives, to be more present, have that time freedom to really give back with their time, their money, their resources. Is there any last thing that you want to share that we haven't covered yet? And then we can say goodbye.
Yeah, just quickly, if you are feeling that fear and that kind of like thing in your chest and your throat when you're trying something new, that's a good sign. That just means that this is important to you. And I would look toward that. I'd be more scared if you weren't feeling that way. So for those of you who are nervous, you're headed in the right direction, and just go, because, I'd rather live a life full of oh wells than a life full of what ifs, because those oh wells are the ones that give you the chance to do something great. And so go out there, experience, do, learn, and reiterate, and serve others.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your heart and attention in listening to Lead with Love. If this message, leading with love in life and business, and remembering the humans and beating hearts behind the numbers and all of that good stuff, I would love for you to take the time to leave an honest review. It would mean the world to me, and it also helps more people find out about the goodness and helping spreading more love in the world, which we really, really need. So I would really appreciate that, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.